They call me the hero of Helsreach. I have been called worse, butcher, fanatic, the Emperor's wrath in ceramite. But hero troubles me most because it is the least accurate. I was not the hero. They were. The mortals who stood when every calculation said flee, the soldiers who refused to break, the civilians who would not surrender. If you want to understand Helsreach, understand this. I did not save that city. I witnessed it being saved. Let me tell you what I saw. Let me tell you about the day Helsreach stood. Reclusiarch Merrick Grimaldus was a weapon. 3 centuries of warfare had honed him to a killing edge. His skull helm promised death. His Crozius Arcanum had tasted blood on 1,000 worlds. He was a Black Templar chaplain, and he had never failed. He expected Helsreach to be different. The summons came during the Third War for Armageddon. Gazakul Mag Uruk Thraka had returned with a waj that descended on the Forge world like a plague. Billions of orcs. The Black Templars sent crusade fleets and their finest warriors. High Marshal Helbrecht assigned Grimaldus to Helsreach with 5 battle brothers and orders that amounted to a death sentence. Hold the city, protect the Titan foundries. Die well. Grimaldus reviewed his orders in the strike cruiser's embarkation bay. The data was blunt. Helsreach had 63 million souls. It had questionable PDF regiments and 6 space marines to hold against 5 to 8 million orcs. The math was simple. They would lose. Brother Nero asked the question they all thought. Is there any scenario where we survive? No, Grimaldus said. We will die at Helsreach. The orcs will overwhelm us. But we are Black Templars. We do not measure success by survival. We measure it by how many enemies we kill before we fall. If we must die, we die in such a manner that the Emperor himself takes notice. Brother Nero nodded. No pity, no remorse, no fear. Grimaldus felt only cold acceptance. This was simply another day in service. He would do his duty. He would die. The Imperium would continue. Helsreach looked like a corpse from the Thunderhawk's viewport. The hive sprawled across volcanic badlands, a carbuncle of rock-crete reaching toward ash-gray sky. The Titan foundries dominated the eastern sectors, cathedral factories where god machines were born. Those foundries were Grimaldus's objective. Everything else was secondary. The 63 million people were simply context. This was the calculus of imperial warfare. But as the Thunderhawk descended, Grimaldus saw the crowds in the streets, refugees fleeing, families with children, old men and women who had lived entire lives in this hive. Something whispered a question he could not answer. What was the point of defending foundries if everyone who worked them was dead? The command briefing was held in a former administratum building. Grimaldus arrived in full armor. The mortal officers looked terrified. They thought a space marine would save them. Colonel Saren of the Steel Legion was senior officer, a weathered man with burn scars across half his face and the look of someone who had seen too much war. He saluted and gestured to the tactical display. Reclusiarch, the situation is not favorable. Red markers covered the map. Hundreds of orc positions. Enemy approaching from west and south, 5 to 8 million orcs. We have 80,000 soldiers, Steel Legion remnants, PDF, survivors from other campaigns. Morale is poor, supplies adequate for 2 weeks. Grimaldus studied the map. 8 million orcs, 80,000 defenders, 100 to 1. Civilian evacuation? A major shook his head. Impossible. We lack transport capacity. So 63 million would fight or die where they stood. Then we hold, Grimaldus said. We hold until ordered to withdraw or until we are dead. Saren met his gaze. Will we receive reinforcements? The question was asked without hope. No, Grimaldus said. This is a secondary theater. We will not be reinforced. We fight alone. A PDF colonel cleared his throat. Then what's the point? Grimaldus turned. He did not shout. Because 63 million people depend on you. Because if you run, the orcs slaughter everyone and use this hive to strike at the main Imperial positions. You fight because there is no alternative. Are we clear? The colonel went pale. He nodded. Saren almost smiled. Where do you want my regiment? Grimaldus pointed at the temple of the Emperor Ascendant. There. That temple overlooks the main approaches to the foundries. The orcs will target it. We let them come. We bleed them. Saren studied the map. Defensible. But we abandon the outer districts, millions of civilians. Grimaldus met his eyes. The outer districts are already lost. We cannot defend the entire hive. Choose. Saren was quiet. Then he nodded. The foundries. As officers filed out, Saren remained. He approached carefully. Reclusiarch, a word. Grimaldus nodded. Saren glanced at the door. My daughters are in the upper hive, ages 6, 9, and 11. If we fall here, the orcs reach them by nightfall. He met Grimaldus's gaze. We're not falling, are we? Grimaldus looked at this mortal man with his scars and quiet desperation. No, Colonel. We are not falling. Your daughters will live. I give you my oath. Saren's shoulders relaxed. Thank you. The orcs came on the 4th day. Grimaldus stood on the temple wall when the horizon turned green. It started as a distant roar, like an ocean wave building. Then the ground shook. Then he saw them, a tide of green stretching horizon to horizon. Millions. Orcs on foot, in trucks and battle wagons, on bikes belching smoke. They came with crude banners, chanting, firing into the air. This was not an army. It moved like a force of nature. A green avalanche that would bury Helsreach. The defenders watched and understood. Grimaldus saw the moment. Courage died. Men shook. Some vomited. One soldier sat and cried. Grimaldus activated General Vox. All units, fix bayonets, check ammunition. When they reach range, you fire on my command. You fire until your weapons melt. The Emperor is watching. Do not shame him. The orcs reached weapons range. Grimaldus raised his Crozius. All units, fire. Thunder. Every lasgun opened up. Autocannons hammered. Heavy bolters roared. Mortars coughed shells. The orcs died by thousands. Bodies piled. Blood-soaked ash-gray dust. The front rank ceased to exist. But those behind kept coming. They climbed the corpses. They used bodies as cover. A Steel Legion trooper 3 meters from Grimaldus took a bullet to the head and fell without a sound. Another was hit by an orc rocket and simply disintegrated into red mist. The orcs reached the plaza. Grimaldus could see scarred green skin, tusks, red eyes burning with battle joy. He spoke into Squad Vox. Brothers, with me. He vaulted the wall and dropped 6 meters. His armor absorbed impact. The first orc died before registering threat. Grimaldus's Crozius caved in its skull. He pivoted. His bolt pistol put 3 rounds through another's chest. The explosive bolts detonated inside the greenskin's torso. It came apart. His brothers landed beside him. They formed a wedge and drove into the orc tide. Grimaldus killed with mechanical precision. Swing, crush, shoot, advance. His Crozius rose and fell like a piston. Green blood sprayed black armor. An orc knob charged with a power claw. Grimaldus stepped inside its reach and drove his Crozius under its jaw. The knob's head snapped back. It fell twitching. The battle became blur. His chronometer said 4 hours. It felt like 4 minutes. Eventually, the orcs pulled back. Grimaldus stood ankle-deep in corpses. The defenders had held. Barely. On the 12th day, orcs broke through to the Medici wing. Grimaldus was 3 blocks away when the Vox exploded with panic. Orcs in the hospital. Casualties butchered in their beds. He was running before the message finished. His armor's servos whined as he pushed them to limits. He covered 3 blocks in under 2 minutes. The hospital was chaos. Orcs rampaging through corridors. He could hear screaming, human screaming, not soldiers, the wounded, the helpless. He crashed through the doors and killed 3 orcs, tearing apart a medici station. His Crozius pulped the first skull. His bolt pistol obliterated the second. The third he grabbed by the throat and slammed into a wall hard enough to shatter its spine. Brother Kador swept past, power swords humming, cutting down orcs with economical strikes. They moved room to room. The orcs had penetrated deep. They were in the surgery wards. Grimaldus found one standing over an operating table, choppa raised. A medici woman stood between the orc and her patient, holding a scalpel in a shaking hand. She was terrified, weeping, but she had not run. Grimaldus killed the orc with a bolt through its brain. The woman collapsed. "Get back to work," Grimaldus said. "Your patient needs you." She stared. "They're still coming. We'll die." Grimaldus reloaded. "Not while I am here. Finish your surgery." Her name was Octavia. He learned this after the hospital was secured. She had been operating 6 hours straight when the orcs breached. She had not stopped, even hearing people die in corridors. She had kept cutting, suturing, saving, because that was her duty. Grimaldus found her afterward, sitting in blood-soaked surgery, staring at her hands. "You saved them," he said. She looked up with exhausted eyes. 12. I saved 12 today. I lost 36. They died while I was working on someone else. Died because we don't have enough supplies." She laughed, broken. 12 saved. The Imperium will be so proud. Grimaldus knelt so he was eye level. A space marine kneeling before a mortal was unheard of. 12 lives, 12 people who will see tomorrow because of you. 12 families who will not receive death notices. That matters. She shook her head. Does it? In a war this big? What's 12 lives? Everything, he said. The Imperium counts wars in billions, in planets lost and regained. But every one of those billions was a person, with a name, a life, people who loved them. You saved 12 of those people today. Tomorrow you save 12 more. That is not insignificant. That is the only thing that matters. She stared at him. This massive warrior who had killed dozens with his hands, and saw compassion. What's your name? Grimaldus. Thank you, Grimaldus. He stood. No, thank you, Octavia. On the 23rd day, an orc sniper took position in collapsed Factorum ruins. Grimaldus had not known orcs could sniper. He was wrong. The greenskin had a crude longlass, probably looted from a fallen guardsman, and was picking off officers with methodical efficiency. 3 company commanders in 2 days, a commissar, 2 staff officers. Morale was cracking. Officers stopped going near windows. After a week of this, Grimaldus convened surviving officers. We need bait. A young guardsman named Andre volunteered immediately. Grimaldus remembered him from the first days, the boy whose squad died around him, who held his position alone. Andre stood at attention. I'll do it, Colonel Sarin objected. He's a private. The sniper won't target him. Grimaldus shook his head. We promote him. Brevet lieutenant. Give him officer's uniform. When the orc shoots, our snipers triangulate. Sarin looked at Andre. Son, you understand? This orc doesn't miss. Andre nodded. Someone has to do it. Might as well be me. They put Andre on a parapet overlooking the main approach, dressed him in a commissar's coat, gave him a baton and orders to inspect positions, make himself a target. Grimaldus and 4 snipers positioned with overlapping fields. They waited. 1 hour, 2. Andre kept walking. The boy was terrified. Grimaldus could see it in the rigid way he moved. But he did not stop, did not take cover. He walked his patrol route like he had all the time in the world. The shot came at hour 3, a crack like thunder. Andre spun and fell. Snipers opened fire simultaneously, saturating the triangulated position. Grimaldus was already moving. He sprinted to the ruins, found the orc sniper with 3 bullet wounds, still trying to reload. Grimaldus crushed its skull beneath his boot. Andre was still alive. The shot caught his shoulder, missing anything vital. Octavia was working on him. "You did well," Grimaldus said. Andre grinned through pain. "Did we get him?" "We got him." "Worth it, then." Grimaldus stood over this 19-year-old who had volunteered to be bait for an orc sniper and felt something he had not felt in decades. Pride, not in himself, in this mortal, this boy from a farming settlement that no longer existed, who volunteered to die so others might live. That was not weakness. That was strength of a kind Grimaldus was only beginning to understand. On the 35th day, a transmission came through that Grimaldus could not ignore. A woman's voice, cracked with thirst and terror. "Please, anyone, Hab Block 77, subsection K, lower levels. There are children, 20, maybe 30 children, trapped for days. Water ran out yesterday. Please, they're just children." The transmission cut out. Grimaldus stared at the map. Hab Block 77 was 3 kilometers behind orc lines. A rescue mission would require penetrating enemy territory and fighting back through alert forces. It was tactically unsound, strategically questionable, a waste of resources. He was already moving toward the armory. Brother Nero questioned him. "Reclusiarch, we are needed on the walls." "Then Saren holds without us," Grimaldus interrupted. "Those are children. We can save them. We will save them. Gear up." They took a rhino most of the way, smashing through orc mobs too surprised to mount resistance. Then on foot through the ruins. Hab Block 77 was a tomb. Bodies everywhere. Orcs had killed everyone they found, but some had hidden well. Grimaldus followed coordinates to the lower levels, found a sealed blast door. He pounded with his fist. "Imperial forces, open the door." Nothing. Then a child's voice, barely audible through metal. "How do we know you're not orcs?" Grimaldus almost smiled. Smart child. "Because orcs cannot speak Gothic. Because I am a space marine of the Black Templars. Because I have come to take you somewhere safe. Open the door." The locks disengaged. 28 children ranging from toddlers to teenagers, 5 adults, all women, filthy, starving, covered in grime and dried blood, but alive. One woman fell to her knees weeping. "You came. I prayed, but I didn't think anyone would come." "Follow me," Grimaldus said. "Stay close, stay quiet, do exactly what I tell you. If you cannot keep up, I will carry you. No one gets left behind." They moved through orc-infested territory like ghosts. Grimaldus led. His brothers formed protective perimeter. Every orc they encountered died quietly, throats crushed or necks snapped before they could raise alarm. It should have been impossible. 33 civilians, including children, moving through enemy territory. But Grimaldus made it possible. He carried a toddler in one arm while crushing orc skulls with his Crozius. Brother Cador carried 2 more children on his back. They moved in silence, in shadow, and somehow made it to Imperial lines. The refugees were processed, given water and corpse starch rations, sent to the catacombs. Grimaldus watched them go. One child, a girl maybe 6, turned back before disappearing. She smiled at him, just smiled. Then she was gone. Grimaldus stood at the gates and removed his helm. The air was thick with ash and smoke. It tasted like burning promethium and death. But he could still see that smile. 12 lives is everything, Octavia had said. Today, he had saved 33. On the 43rd day, the orcs brought gargants. Grimaldus was inspecting positions when the Vox exploded with panic. Massive walkers approaching from the west. The ground shook. Grimaldus climbed to the temple's highest tower. 3 gargants, crude machines cobbled from scrap, walking fortresses 100 meters tall. They strode toward the district like angry gods, and every step left craters. Behind them came thousands of orc infantry. This was the breakthrough. This was how Helsreach would fall. The defenders despaired. Grimaldus could feel it through the Vox. voices cracking, officers requesting permission to withdraw, units pulling back without orders. The line was breaking, not from cowardice, but from simple realization that conventional weapons could not stop those machines. Grimaldus activated command channel. His voice cut through panic like a blade. All units, those machines are not invincible. They are metal and wires and orc engineering. Orc engineering. Every machine has weak points. All heavy weapons will concentrate fire on the lead gargant's left knee joint. All of them. I do not care if this leaves you vulnerable to infantry. Fire until that machine falls or until you are dead. Am I understood? Saren's voice came back steady. Understood, Reclusiarch. All heavy weapons, target lead gargant's left knee. The batteries opened up. Lascannons, missile launchers, autocannons, even small arms fire. The lead gargant's void shields flared and sparked, overloaded, failed. Last fire began scoring armor plating. Missile trails streaked toward the joint. The gargant staggered. Its stride broke. It tried to compensate, but damage was too severe. The knee buckled. The entire machine, hundreds of tons of metal and madness, toppled forward. It hit the ground with an impact that registered on seismographs across the continent. Then it exploded. The detonation was nuclear in scale. A fireball rose into ash-dark sky. The shockwave flattened buildings. Orcs by the hundred were vaporized. The defenders cheered. Some were crying, some laughing with hysterical relief. They had killed a gargant, a god machine, with faith and fury. Grimaldus allowed them 10 seconds. Target the second walker, same methodology. They killed the second 90 minutes later. The third retreated. The orcs pulled back, their offensive broken. That night, Grimaldus walked through positions and saw something new in the defenders' eyes. Belief. They believed they could win. Belief was dangerous. It could shatter. But it was also the most powerful weapon in the Imperial arsenal. On the 55th day, Grimaldus gave the speech that would define him. 3 regiments had been destroyed in one assault. Hospital overflowing with casualties. Supplies at critical levels. Some units were openly discussing withdrawal. Not desertion, not cowardice. Just rational calculation that they had done all they could, and continuing was suicide. Grimaldus assembled every soldier who could be spared, packed them into the temple nave beneath stained glass, and he spoke. I know you are tired. I know you are afraid. I know you want to live. These are not weaknesses. These prove you are human. But understand something. Look around. These people are witnesses. They are here to see what you do, to remember who you were. Right now, you have a choice. You can leave. Run to the upper hive and hide. No one will stop you. But if you run, you will be forgotten. The Imperium is vast beyond measure. Trillions of souls across millions of worlds. You are a rounding error in the galactic census. If you die unremarked, you simply disappear. Another casualty, another statistic. No one will know you fought. No one will know you stood when standing was impossible. You will not be witnessed. He paused, letting silence build. But if you stay, if you choose to stand with me, to hold this temple, this city, this moment, then I will witness you. I will remember every name, every face, every act of courage. When I return to my chapter, when I stand before my brothers in the halls of our fortress, I will tell them about you, about the mortals who fought beside me at Helsreach, who held against impossible odds, who refused to break when every rational calculation said they should break. I will tell them I have seen courage, real courage, not the genetic courage of space marines bred into us by the Emperor's design, but mortal courage, human courage, the courage to stand despite fear, despite exhaustion, despite knowing you will probably die. That is the courage that matters. That is the courage the Emperor sees and values above all others. His voice dropped to almost a whisper, but in the cathedral's acoustics every word carried. I cannot promise you will survive. I cannot promise we will win. I can promise this. If you stand with me, you will be witnessed. Your courage will be remembered. Your sacrifice will mean something. And when the Imperium tells the story of Helsreach, your names will be carved into that story. Forever. You will be remembered as heroes. That is my oath to you. Stay, stand, be witnessed. No one cheered. They simply returned to positions and kept fighting, but something fundamental had changed. They were no longer fighting for the Imperium. They fought for each other, for the person beside them, for their names to be remembered. Grimaldus had given them the one thing the Imperium never gave its soldiers: worth. The 68th day began with ash falling from the sky like snow. The orcs had set fire to outer districts. Smoke was thick enough to choke even through respirators, visibility down to meters. Through the smoke, through ash and fire, came the final assault. The orcs committed everything, every tank, every walker, every war boss with a war band to lead. The ground shook with their passage. Grimaldus stood on the walls and watched darkness approach. The darkness was green. The darkness roared. Saren stood beside him, laser gun in hand. Reclusiarch, my daughters, if we don't, we will, Grimaldus interrupted. Saren smiled slightly. When this is over, tell them their father stood with the hero of Helsreach. Tell them he mattered. Grimaldus looked at this mortal man who had fought beside him 68 days, who had never broken, who had deployed his regiment with tactical brilliance. You tell them yourself, Colonel, we are not done. The orc tide crashed into the district like a tsunami hitting a seawall. The noise was overwhelming. Millions of orcs roaring, weapons firing, engines screaming. Defenders died by hundreds in the first minutes. Entire positions were obliterated. The orcs were everywhere at once. Too many to kill, too many to stop. Grimaldus activated Command Vox one last time. All units, this is the moment. Hold your positions. Fix bayonets. If we die today, we die standing. We die together. We die as warriors. The Emperor protects. Then the ground shook in a different way. Something was coming from the east, from the foundries. Grimaldus turned and saw what looked like mountains walking. Titans. Real titans. Not orc gargants. Imperial god machines. Warlord-class battle titans standing 60 meters tall. Reavers. An Imperator-class behemoth that towered over everything. A cathedral that walked. They strode out of the foundries with horns blaring and weapons charging. The foundries had been working throughout the siege, repairing damaged titans, awakening ancient machine spirits, preparing for this moment. The machines he had been ordered to protect were now protecting him. The titans opened fire and the world became light. Plasma annihilators that boiled the air, volcano cannons that left trenches of molten glass, Gatling blasters that sounded like the end of days. The orc tide broke against that firepower like water against stone. Thousands died in seconds. Tens of thousands. The orcs, for all their numbers, for all their savage joy in battle, could not stand against firepower on that scale. They broke. They fled. The green tide receded, leaving behind a carpet of dead so thick you could walk across it without touching ground. Helsreach stood. Against all odds, against every prediction, Helsreach stood. Grimaldus stood on the walls and watched the titans advance. He removed his helm. The air tasted like burning metal and death. His armor was scorched black. His crozius was caked with dried blood. He had not slept in 18 days, had not removed armor in 23. He was exhausted beyond any previous limit, but alive. They were alive. Around him, defenders were crying, embracing, some laughing. Some had collapsed from exhaustion and relief. Saren sat on the battlement with his head in his hands, shoulders shaking. Grimaldus sat beside him. Neither spoke for a long time. Your daughters will know you stood with the defenders of Helsreach, Grimaldus said finally. They will know you were a hero. Saren looked at him with red eyes. Will they know you were the reason? Grimaldus shook his head. I was not the reason. You were. All of you. I merely witnessed. The days after the siege were strange and terrible. The orcs were not completely driven from Armageddon. The war continued in other sectors. But Helsreach was secure. The foundries were intact. Survivors began cleaning up. Millions of corpses needed burning or burial. Millions of refugees needed processing. The city was in ruins. 90% of buildings damaged or destroyed. But it could be rebuilt. That was the point. It could be rebuilt. Life would continue. A remembrancer named Sindal approached Grimaldus during those dark days. She was part of the Imperial Propaganda Corps, assigned to document the war. She wanted to write about him. The hero of Helsreach, she called him. Grimaldus rejected the title immediately. He was no hero. He had simply done his duty. Heroes were mortals who achieved the impossible despite being mortal. He was a space marine. The impossible was expected. But Sindal was insistent. The people need a hero. They need someone to represent what happened here. Someone to make it mean something. You are that someone. Grimaldus thought about the children he had saved, about Octavia operating under fire, about Andre volunteering as bait, about Saren protecting his daughters, about thousands of mortals who had stood when running would have been rational. If you write about me, he said finally, you write about them, all of them, their names, their stories, their courage. I will not be remembered unless they are remembered with me. Sindal wrote her book. The Death of Helsreach, she called it. The title was ironic. Helsreach had not died. It survived. But the city that existed before the siege was dead. What rose from the ashes was something different, something tempered by fire, something that knew what it could endure. The book spread across the Imperium. It was read in war colleges and preached from pulpits. It made Grimaldus famous, the hero of Helsreach, the space marine who fought beside mortals, who witnessed their courage, who made the Imperium remember that individual lives could still matter. He became a symbol of hope, of resistance, of the idea that even in the grim darkness of the far future, there could still be heroes. Grimaldus returned to crusade with his chapter. He resumed his duties as reclusiarch. But he carried Helsreach with him. In his private chambers he maintained a shrine, not to the emperor, not to Sigismund or Dorn, to the fallen of Helsreach. He had taken relics from the battlefield, a Steel Legion regimental banner, a medici kit that had belonged to Octavia, dog tags from young Andre, who had died holding his position on the final day, a piece of the temple's altar. These were his treasures, his witnesses. They reminded him of what he had learned. That courage came in many forms, that mortals, despite their weakness, could embody the imperial truth as perfectly as any space marine. That individual lives mattered. That being strong meant protecting the weak, not despising them. That faith without compassion was tyranny. He taught these lessons to his brothers, not openly, not as doctrine, but through example, through the way he coordinated with guard units, through the way he spoke about the mortals they fought beside, through the simple act of learning their names. Some of his brothers dismissed this. Mortals were mortals, useful, perhaps, but not worth dwelling on. But others listened. Others remembered their own desperate battles, their own moments when mortal courage had saved the day. Slowly, quietly, the culture of his crusade began to change. Black Templars began to see mortals not as expendable assets, but as fellow warriors in the Emperor's service. Different, yes, weaker, certainly, but worthy of respect. This was Grimaldus's true legacy, not the defense of Helsreach. What came after? I am old now, by Space Marine standards. 3 centuries of war. I have seen 1,000 worlds. I have killed 100,000 enemies. But I am still the hero of Helsreach. I will always be the hero of Helsreach. That title is burden and blessing. It reminds me every day of what I witnessed, of what those mortals achieved. when I stand before the Emperor in the golden halls of Terra, when my service is finally done and I am judged for my deeds, I will not speak of orcs killed or battles won. I will speak of them, of Colonel Saren and his daughters, of Medici Octavia and her 12 lives, of Guardsman Andre and his impossible courage, of the little girl who smiled at me, of the thousands of names I memorized, the thousands of witnesses I witnessed. I was there the day Helsreach fell. No, I was there the day Helsreach stood. I was there when 63 million people faced extinction and chose to fight instead of run. I was there when mortals did the impossible. I was there when courage mattered more than strength. I was there when individual lives mattered in an Imperium that counts its dead by the billion. I was there. I witnessed, and I will never forget. This is not my story. This is their story. I am merely the one who remembers, the one who speaks their names, the one who ensures the Imperium knows what happened at Helsreach, what is possible when people refuse to yield, what humanity can achieve when pushed to the edge. This is the story of heroes, real heroes, mortal heroes, and it will be told as long as the Imperium endures, as long as there are warriors to fight and people to protect, as long as courage matters, as long as we remember that individual lives are not statistics, that every death is a tragedy, that every life saved is a victory. This is what Helsreach taught me. This is what I witnessed, and I will carry it forward until the day I die. No pity, no remorse, no fear, but also compassion, also mercy, also the recognition that the mortals we protect are not lesser beings. They are the reason we exist. They are what makes the Imperium worth defending. They are humanity, and humanity is worth fighting for. This is the lesson of Helsreach. This is the truth I witnessed, and I will witness it until the end of days.